The facility hummed with its usual sterile efficiency as I walked down corridor D7, my footsteps echoing against polished concrete. 3 months into my assignment, and I still wasn't used to the isolation. My name is David Wait, scratch that. David Martinez. Former military, current specialist in what the agency euphemistically called exotic asset management. My current assignment sat behind reinforced glass in cell 47. Tada. That's what her file said, though I doubted it was her real name. Foxwoman. Vulpine humanoid. The classifications were cold, clinical. They didn't capture the unsettling reality of her presence. She was beautiful in a way that made my instincts scream danger. Russet fur covered her arms and legs, transitioning to pale skin across her chest and face. Her ears, large, pointed, expressive, tracked every sound in the room. And her eyes, amber, luminous, too intelligent for comfort. Morning rounds, I announced, swiping my keycard. She didn't acknowledge me, just sat on her cot, tail wrapped around her body like a shield. Standard behavior. My predecessor's notes had been clear, minimal interaction. She's compliant but distant. Don't try to engage. I checked the monitors. Vitals stable. Room temperature optimal. Food intake normal. Everything by the book. Your medical scan is scheduled for 1400 hours, I said, making a note on my tablet. Her ear twitched. That was all. I continued my routine, professional, detached. This was just another job. Another containment protocol. The agency had been clear about the risks. Kaida's species experienced cyclical periods of heightened aggression and strength. The moons affected them somehow, triggered biological responses that made them dangerous. My job wasn't to understand her, just to keep everyone safe. As I turned to leave, her voice stopped me. What's your name? It was the first time she'd spoken directly to me in 3 months. Her voice was softer than I expected, with a melodic quality that didn't match her file's description of her as potentially hostile. I hesitated at the door. Protocol said minimal personal information. Martinez, I replied. Martinez, she repeated, testing the syllables. Is that a human thing? Using only part of your name. It's professional. Professional, she echoed, and something in her tone suggested she was filing that word away, analyzing it. I left before the conversation could continue. But as I walked back to my monitoring station, I felt the weight of her gaze following me. Something had shifted in that brief exchange, though I couldn't articulate what. That night, reviewing surveillance footage, I noticed something my predecessor had either missed or failed to report. Every time I entered her cell, Kaida's heart rate increased. Not from fear, from something else entirely. 2 weeks passed, and the dynamics shifted dramatically. Kaida began talking. Not constantly, but deliberately targeting moments when I was distracted with equipment checks or data entry. She'd ask questions about Earth, about human customs, about the weather outside her windowless cell. Do humans pair for life? She asked during a routine inspection. I looked up from calibrating the thermal scanner. Some do. It varies. Varies, she said thoughtfully. So you choose. You're not bound by biology alone. I suppose not. She moved closer, and I instinctively stepped back, not from fear, but from awareness. She noticed, and something flickered across her face. Disappointment? Amusement? I won't hurt you, Martinez, she said quietly. I know what you've been told about my kind, but I'm not dangerous. Not to you. It's protocol. Protocol, she interrupted, her tail swishing with what I was learning to recognize as irritation. Always protocol. Do humans ever act without their rules? The rules keep people safe. Safe, she repeated, and the words sounded bitter. Is that what you call this? Keeping me in a box, monitoring me like I'm a specimen. Her words struck deeper than they should have. I've been trying not to think about the ethical implications of my job, the fact that Kaida was sentient, intelligent, essentially imprisoned for the crime of being different. I don't make the policy, I said. I just follow orders. Yes, you've said. She turned away, presenting her back to me, ears flattened. You may leave, Martinez. Your protocol is satisfied. I should have left. Instead, I found myself asking, what would you do? If you could leave. She turned slowly, surprise evident in her widened eyes. I would run, she said simply. through forests under moonlight. I would hunt. I would feel wind that doesn't come from ventilation systems. Her voice dropped lower. I would find someone who saw me as more than a containment problem. The intimacy in her words caught me off guard. This wasn't the distant, compliant subject for my briefings. This was someone desperately lonely, and I was the only consistent human presence in her life. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. Her expression softened. "You're different from the others, Martinez. You apologize. You see me." She paused, then added quietly, "What's your first name?" "Your real name." Every instinct screamed violation of protocol. But something in her earnest gaze made me answer. "David." "David," she whispered like it was precious. "Thank you." That night, alone in my quarters, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd said my name. About the loneliness in her eyes. About the fact that she'd been in containment for 8 months with minimal human contact, treated like a dangerous animal rather than a thinking being. I pulled up her file again, reading deeper this time. Her species, the Kitsari, were empathic, social creatures. Isolation was a form of torture for them. The previous supervisor had requested transfer after 4 months, citing psychological strain. Now I understood what that meant. The surveillance footage from that day showed something my conscious mind had tried to ignore, the way Kaida's posture changed when I was in the room. How her tail relaxed. How she oriented toward me like a flower towards sunlight. She wasn't just talking to me. She was connecting with me. And God help me, I was beginning to connect back. The lunar cycle was approaching. My briefings became more urgent, warnings more severe. During the 3 days of the full moon, Kaida would experience heightened physical capabilities and emotional volatility. Previous incidents with Kitsari subjects had resulted in damaged facilities and injured personnel. Standard protocol, minimal contact. Remote monitoring only. Sedation if necessary. But I couldn't shake the feeling that isolation would make things worse. "David," Kaida called out when I entered for what was supposed to be my final pre-cycle inspection. She'd started using my first name consistently now, and I'd stopped correcting her. "You seem troubled." "The moon cycle starts tomorrow," I said, checking the reinforced restraints that I was required to test. "I need to. Lock me down. Treat me like a monster." Her voice was flat. "I know the procedure. It's for everyone's safety, including yours." She moved closer to the glass partition between us. "David, look at me." I did. Her amber eyes held mine with uncomfortable intensity. "I won't lose control," she said firmly. "Not if you're here. That's not how it works." The reports are about Kitsari in distress. Alone. Terrified. She pressed her palm against the glass. "I'm not alone anymore. I have you." My hand moved toward the glass before I could stop it, matching her position. Just the barrier between us, but the gesture felt intimate, dangerous. "You can't know that," I said quietly. "I can feel it," she insisted. "My people, we're empathic. I feel your presence like warmth. When you're near, everything stabilizes. My heart rate, my body temperature, my emotions." She paused, vulnerable. "You calmed the storm in me, David. Even during the cycle, I believe you would." "That's not possible, isn't it?" She tilted her head. "Why do you think my vitals improve when you're in the room? Why do you think I started talking only to you? There's a connection between us. You feel it too. I know you do. I wanted to deny it. Should have denied it. But she was right. The way my heart raced when I approached her cell had nothing to do with fear. The way I found excuses to extend my visits, to ask unnecessary questions. The way I'd started looking forward to hearing her voice. "This is inappropriate," I said, but the words lacked conviction. "By whose standards?" "Your protocols." She leaned closer, her breath fogging the glass. "I've been here 8 months, David. 8 months of isolation. Of being studied and monitored and treated like a thing. Then you arrived. And for the first time, someone looked at me and saw a person. Do you have any idea what that means to me? I should have left. Should have reported this conversation. Should have requested immediate transfer. Instead, I asked, "What you want from me?" "Trust," she said simply. "Tomorrow, when the cycle begins, don't lock me down. Don't sedate me. Just be here. Let me prove that I'm in control." I can't authorize that. Then don't authorize it. Just do it. Her eyes pleaded. Please, David. I'm so tired of being alone. That night, I stood in the monitoring station, watching her on the screens. She lay on her cot, curled around herself, tail tucked close, utterly alone in her reinforced cell. I thought about what she'd said, about empathic connections, about trust, and I made a decision that would either prove her right or end my career. Possibly both. The full moon rose, invisible behind facility walls, but felt nonetheless. I entered her cell at 0600 hours, against every protocol in the manual. The remote monitoring station sat empty. I disabled the cameras using credentials I technically shouldn't have. If this went wrong, there'd be no evidence. Just my word against an incident report. Kaida was already awake, pacing. Her movements were more fluid than usual, predatory grace amplified. Her eyes glowed brighter, pupils dilated. Every warning sign from the briefings manifested before me. You came, she breathed, stopping mid-stride. Against my better judgment, I admitted, keeping the door open behind me, my one concession to survival instinct. How do you feel? Alive, she said and laughed, a sound with too many edges. Everything is sharper, stronger. I can hear your heartbeat from here. Fest. Are you afraid? Should I be? She moved closer, each step deliberate. Do you trust me, David? I'm here, aren't I? That's not an answer. She stopped just outside my arm's reach, her body thrumming with barely contained energy. The cycle makes everything intense. Emotions, sensations, needs. Right now, every instinct is screaming at me. But not to hurt you. Then what? Her gaze locked with mine, vulnerable despite her physical power. To touch you. To be close to someone who sees me. To stop being alone for just one moment. My breath caught. This was beyond protocol violation. This was crossing into territory I couldn't uncross. Kaida, I know what I'm asking, she said quietly. I know the risk you took coming here. I know what this could cost you. She slowly extended her hand, palm up offering. But I need you to know that you're not just my supervisor. You're the first person in this facility who's treated me like I matter. I stared at her outstretched hand, russet fur soft looking against sharp claws. Every logical part of my mind screamed warnings. But another part, the part that had spent 3 months watching her isolation, that heard the loneliness in her voice, that felt something shift when she said my name, that part reached back. Our hands connected. Her skin was warm, warmer than human, electric with the cycle's energy. Her claws rested against my wrist, gentle despite their sharpness. She exhaled shakily, like she'd been holding her breath for months. See, she whispered, I'm in control. With you, I'm in control. We stood there, hands clasped, crossing every professional boundary. Her thumb traced small circles on my palm, and I felt the gesture down to my bones. This changes everything, I said. I know. She stepped closer, free hand rising to rest against my chest, feeling my heartbeat. David, I need you to understand something. My people, we bond intensely. When we connect with someone, it's not casual. It's consuming. You're saying, I'm saying that I've bonded with you. Maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe it was the isolation, the vulnerability, the fact that you were kind when no one else was. But it happened. Her ears flattened, anxious. And during the cycle, those bonds intensify. Right now, being close to you is the only thing keeping me grounded. But it's also making me want things I shouldn't. What things? Her eyes met mine, molten gold. To be held. To be wanted. To feel something other than loneliness. Her voice dropped lower. To know that I'm not just an assignment to you. My free hand moved to her face before I could stop it, fingers gentle against her cheek. She leaned into the touch, a soft sound escaping her throat. Relief, longing, need. You're not just an assignment, I admitted. You haven't been for a while. She closed the remaining distance between us, her body against mine, face buried against my shoulder. I felt her shake, felt the controlled power in her frame, the trust required for her to be this vulnerable. Thank you, she whispered against my neck. Thank you for seeing me. I held her as the morning light filtered through reinforced glass, both of us aware we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The cycle would last 3 days. 3 days of heightened intensity, of maintaining control through connection rather than isolation. 3 days that would either prove the protocols wrong or destroy everything. But in that moment, with her in my arms, I couldn't bring myself to regret my choice. The 3 days passed in a blur of closeness that both terrified and exhilarated me. I stayed in her cell more than I left it, abandoning all pretense of professional distance. We talked for hours, about her world, her people, her life before captivity. She told me about forests that sang with bioluminescence, about pack structures based on emotional bonds rather than hierarchy, about the loneliness of being the only Kitsari in human hands. And I told her about myself, about the military career that ended badly, about the isolation I'd chosen, about the walls I'd built to avoid connection. She listened with those luminous eyes, her tail curled around my leg like an anchor. The physical closeness intensified. She needed touch the way humans needed air, her hand in mine, her head on my shoulder, our bodies pressed together as we slept on her too-small cot. I learned the sound of her purr-like rumble when content, the way her ears swiveled toward me when I spoke, the precise pressure of her claws against my skin that meant trust. On the final night of the cycle, she kissed me. It was tentative at first, a question more than a demand. But when I responded, when I pulled her closer and felt her body melt against mine, the kiss deepened into something that made my heart race. Her hands tangled in my hair, claws gentle against my scalp, and the soft sound she made sent electricity down my spine. David, she breathed against my lips. I need you to understand. When this cycle ends, what I feel won't diminish. Kitsari bonds don't fade. I know, I whispered back, and I did. Somewhere over these 3 days, I'd stopped thinking of this as a mistake and started thinking of it as inevitable. We made love slowly, carefully, learning each other's bodies with wonder and need. She was silk and fire beneath my hands, responsive to every touch, her pleasure feeding mine in an escalating spiral. When she cried out my name, claws digging into my shoulders, I felt simultaneously invincible and terrified. Because this wasn't just physical. It was connection, recognition, the kind of intimacy I'd spent years avoiding. And I was utterly, hopelessly lost in it. Dawn came too quickly. The cycle ended, and with it came reality. The facility director stood outside Kaida's cell, accompanied by 2 security officers and my replacement supervisor. The cameras I'd disabled had been noticed. Questions had been asked. Martinez, the director, said coldly, "You're suspended pending investigation. Violation of containment protocols, unauthorized access, falsification of monitoring records. You're lucky we're not pressing criminal charges." I didn't argue. Couldn't. The evidence was irrefutable. Kaida pressed against the glass, eyes wide with panic. No, you can't take him. He kept me stable. He helped me through the cycle without incident. Doesn't that prove? It proves nothing except massive protocol breach, the director snapped. You're being transferred to a high-security facility effective immediately. No human contact. Complete isolation until we determine proper containment procedures. You can't. Kaida's voice broke. Please, David, tell them. Tell them I won't survive that. I met her eyes through the glass, saw the terror there, the betrayal. All the trust we'd built, the connection we'd forged, being ripped away. I'll fight this, I promised her. I'll find a way. You'll stay away from this asset, the director interrupted. Your access is revoked. Security will escort you from the premises. They pulled me away as Kaida screamed my name, her control finally breaking as they activated the sedation protocols. The last thing I saw was her collapsed against the glass, reaching for me even as consciousness faded. 6 months later, I sat in a hearing room, facing a review board. I'd spent those months building a case, gathering evidence, contacting xenobiology experts, empathic species researchers, anyone who could testify that isolation-based containment for Kitsari was not just ineffective but cruel. Kaida's condition had deteriorated rapidly after our separation. She'd stopped eating, stopped speaking, her vitals declining despite medical intervention. The facility had been forced to acknowledge that something in their protocols was fundamentally wrong. Mr. Martinez, the board chair, said, reviewing my documentation, "You're arguing for a complete restructuring of exotic asset containment procedures based on your involvement with Subject K-47? Based on evidence that empathic species require social bonds to survive," I corrected. Kaida isn't an asset. She's a person, and your protocols are killing her. The room fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, one of the board members spoke. What do you propose? I took a breath. This was the moment everything hinged on. Supervised integration. Assigned companions for empathic species. Recognition that isolation is torture, not containment. And in Kaida's specific case, I paused. Release her to my custody. I'll take full responsibility. She's already bonded to me. Separating us serves no purpose except punishment. That's highly irregular, another member objected. So is letting someone die because we're too rigid to admit our methods don't work. I shot back. The deliberation took 3 hours. When they emerged, the chair looked exhausted. Conditional approval. Subject K-47 will be released to supervise community integration with you as primary guardian. Monthly evaluations. Any sign of instability results in immediate reconfinement. Understood. Understood. They brought her to the release facility in restraints she didn't need anymore. She was thinner, her eyes dimmed, but when she saw me, everything in her expression came alive. David. I opened my arms, and she collapsed into them, sobbing against my chest. I told you I'd find a way, I whispered into her fur. I'm so sorry it took so long. You came back, she breathed, claws clutching my shirt like I might disappear. They said you wouldn't. They said I'd never see you again. They were wrong. I pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Kaida, this won't be easy. There are rules, evaluations, people watching. But we're together. And I'm not leaving you again. Her tail wrapped around my leg, an anchor and a claim. Take me home, David, she whispered. Wherever that is, as long as you're there. So I did. And in a small apartment far from sterile containment cells, under a sky where she could finally see the moon, we built something the protocols never accounted for. We built a life. Together.